Hello and welcome to Ticket Manager's All Access Interview Series, engaging leaders from across the sports marketing spectrum to identify and explore critical issues in the business of sports, entertainment, sponsorship, activation, ticketing, hospitality, and even more. I'm your host, Jim Andrews. Joining me on this episode to give us a 360-degree look at an organization that is innovating and generating a great deal of interest is Alex Baldwin, president of the Korn Ferry Tour. Welcome, Alex, and thanks for joining us.
Jim, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. I'm thrilled to have you. I think there's so much going on with the tour and under your leadership that I'd like to explore with you today. And I wanted to start off going back a little bit and your past role before you became president of the Korn Ferry Tour was vice president of corporate partnerships for the PGA Tour. Yeah. And now that you're at the Korn Ferry Tour, which is of course the pathway to the PGA Tour, I'm curious from that the sponsorship standpoint, how the relationship with brands, with prospective partners may differ between the two organizations. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And, maybe start us off with whatever you want us to know about the Korn Ferry Tour, but talk about how the relationship with partners is maybe in some cases similar and in some cases different.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. I've had an opportunity to work within many of the different sort of sectors of the sports marketing business. And most recently, and I would say the lion's share of the time I've spent has been on the corporate partner side, whether it's from a business development side, selling sponsorships, or whether it's consulting with sponsors to help them identify, the amplification points or, the alignment points with the investment that they've made in sponsor and ultimately the activations that realize the critical ROI that they're looking for. It has given me a tremendous opportunity to understand the business and to really, look through the lens of, as partners, again, make these investments, it's ultimately, very much defined by that return. And on the Korn Ferry Tour, we have really an interesting value proposition. We are certainly sort of where the PGA Tour's future stars find their origin story. And it's the initial kind of platform in which we can tell these stories and bring people into the journey in a way that is, closely connected. So for us, we have very much sort of this microcosm that allows us on our umbrella sponsorship with Korn Ferry, but also with our title sponsors and also integrating many of our official marketing partners to bring these brands, bring their core customer experiences, bringing their sort of brand activations, their media spends, their investments in players. We have an ability to bring all of that to life at an earlier stage in the process. So, a relevant example right now, Scotty Scheffler was the Korn Ferry Tour Player of the Year in 2019. Scotty has been part of Team Veritex Bank. He's been an ambassador for that Texas bank for years, since that 2019 Korn Ferry Tour, that year that he did play with us. And that led them to become a title sponsor with us. Originally planned for 2020, was delayed to 2021, but they've been on the ride, right? They've been part of that journey, and seeing Scotty ascend to number one in the world, winning the Dell Match Play, and then obviously wearing that green jacket a few Sundays ago was an amazing realization of just a great story, and it's just beginning.
The quintessential getting in on the ground floor, right? That's what we say to sponsors is there's always that opportunity, and boy, that has really paid off for them in Scotty's case.
Yeah, and Simmons Bank, same thing. Another regional bank that we work with, a title sponsor for us in Nashville, they invested in Will Zalatoris before he was Will Zalatoris. And being part of that ride from 2020 to 2021 and seeing him become PGA Tour Rookie of the Year, certainly exciting milestones. And it, having your brand be a part of that, the content that you're able to create, the storytelling, the brand association, the brand visibility, those are powerful things.
And I'd like to come back and talk about some of the title sponsors and the relationship there. But before we do that, maybe let's go a little bit broader, because I'd love to learn a little bit more just about how you're marketing the Korn Ferry Tour in general, whether that's building the brand, attracting bigger or different audiences. What are you looking at in terms of growing the tour?
So there's a lot of different indicators that we're looking at as far as growth. Number one, you mentioned title sponsors. So I'm pleased to say when I started back in 2019, we were at, just a little bit over 11. We got to 15 by 2019 title sponsors. We now have 21 title sponsors. We've seen this growth again during, a pretty volatile, period of time. We've seen that investment. We've seen these corporate brands really wanting to be a part of this tour. For again, it provides a point of access that's at a lower cost, and it gives them an incredible property to be able to host clients, create community engagement, employee opportunities in terms of employee appreciation. So for us, one of those goals is to continue to see that corporate community and that sponsorship investment grow. I feel very good about kind of the results that we've shown many of those title sponsors. I would say, again, another kind of point of measurement for us is, our players and their success. 82% of PGA Tour membership has played on the Korn Ferry Tour. We look at our players' performance at major championships. Again, talking about the Masters just a few weeks ago, we had 44 players qualify to play at Augusta that were formerly Korn Ferry Tour members. Once the cut was made, we had 32 representing the Korn Ferry Tour. And by Sunday, when the last putt dropped, 7 out of the top 10 were Korn Ferry Tour alumni, right? So again, as we see sort of that growth and our responsibility and ultimately really identifying, preparing, and transitioning that next generation of PGA Tour stars is coming to life. For the future, one of the areas that I think we're very focused on from a marketing and media perspective is really building these players' brands with our fans, earlier. We want them to know who Scottie Scheffler is before he's Scottie Scheffler. We want them to know who Will Zalatoris is before he's Will Zalatoris, right? And this is where you really get into the great stories. You learn their background, we just have a unique opportunity to get to know them. With Korn Ferry, we have a docuseries called One Shot Away that aired on CBS this past weekend. It's a 6-part series. You can also find it on our YouTube channel. We'll also be putting a lot of content out on social. So again, it's a great opportunity for us to bolster all that library of content so that when, Scottie wins the Masters or wins, we have all of that footage archived and we can continue to have that touch point with fans. So for me, the future looks, 2 big things. Number one is just more content, more coverage, elevating the overall profile of the tour and a real understanding of who we are and what our role is. And then I would just say, from we are the competition and we are the razor thin line that separates these competitors from the Korn Ferry Tour to the PGA Tour. And it's just continuing to push our events, elevate our events to a standard that, when guys are playing in between tours, you can't hardly, feel the difference.
One of the things that you mentioned, some of the content pieces that you're working on, and often in the sports world, the so-called minor leagues have much different and very compelling stories to tell, and are often the place where we get some of that experimentation and innovation. Is that the case that you find with the Korn Ferry Tour?
100%. And I've got a great sort of example to cite. So in January of 2020, we were hosting events in the Bahamas. And they were previously had been Golf Channel broadcast, and we decided to test live stream. And we decided to do it with a new technology that was called bonded cell cameras. And what it did was it enabled us to capture the broadcast, that competition coverage, that footage, and we were able to transmit it back to our offices and our production facilities here in St. Augustine, Florida. And we were able to produce the show remotely. So what it meant was we didn't have to have the large production trucks. We didn't have to incur all the expenses of the people and that entire on-site production. We were able to do that all out of St. Augustine. So fast forward, once COVID hit, And it was very successful, bottom line. Once COVID hit and we needed a solution to be able to broadcast our events with fewer people, not having to send people out, have them travel, it had proved itself within the context of our Bahamas tournaments and was ultimately something that we put in play and have now literally transferred our entire production model to using this bonded cell technology.
Let's go back and also talk about your major sponsor, and that's Korn Ferry, because I find them to be kind of a fascinating partner, and especially given the fact that your brand is also their brand to a great extent. But they're a large international company in a sector that isn't known for sports marketing as other industries are. So can you tell us just a little bit about the role that Korn Ferry plays and what they're looking to achieve through the sponsorship?
For sure. I would say, there's a little bit of part luck here, but also really grateful that we found a sponsor and a partner at a time where creating an alignment at a point where our trajectory, I feel so good about kind of where we've come since we began our partnership with them in terms of the growth and the impact we've had. But they are, a global organizational consulting firm. They have been in business for over 50 years, and their focus is people, okay, and helping ultimately people exceed their potential, right? It's about advancing, and it's about sort of that journey that a professional, for a professional, employee, a business leader, and their story, their brand, and what these stand for truly aligns so organically with who we are and what we do from a competitive perspective, and that role we play in identifying, preparing, and transitioning that next generation of PGA Tour stars. So it is a very natural fit, and it has given us really the opportunity to be able to talk about and really, again, authentically tell these stories in the context of again, exceeding your potential. They have, again, been, very invested. They're also playing a role with us in helping us with our players build their brands and providing kind of some of that counsel and that coaching, if you will. It's not just about kind of the inside the ropes growth and development, but also sort of how you manage your brand and your business as a professional and as you grow at the different stages of your career. And I think that's another kind of really relevant analogy here. It's not just sort of for that business, that C-suite, that executive leader. They very much are engaged and work with people at all the stages of development in their careers.
And were the conversation with them, did it always identify the Korn Ferry Tour, what is now the Korn Ferry Tour, from the beginning because of that, the aspects, the developmental and the aspects of it, the fact that kind of really aligns well with what they do?
It did. And they, from the onset, as they began their search in sponsorship and in sport, they knew they wanted something that was kind of a role that played a role in sort of the development stage. They liked golf. It obviously resonates from a C-suite, from a B2B perspective, very strong for them in terms of their audience. And we as a sport are evolving and we're continuing to grow. And I think as an international company, as you look at some of the players that, it works very well, obviously, with their business.
Well, and then we talked about the individual tournaments and their title sponsors, and there's been a lot of discussion in other sports recently about what's the best way to coordinate kind of the partnership recruiting process between leagues or sanctioning bodies and then individual teams and events, and sometimes there can be conflicts. Can you just tell us how the tour works with your tournament organizers in assisting them with the sponsorship of their individual events, and maybe give us a sense of we've talked about some of them, but who those sponsors are with
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I talk about partnership, but I'm going to say that the Korn Ferry Tour is very much a family. And we have a team here. I have a tournament business and affairs team that also supports our title sponsors. And they ultimately are a resource across, a number of different areas in supporting our tournaments. We also have agronomy resources. We have our tournament competitions and rules team. We have our operations staff that travel week in and week out that support, everything from our tournament logistically to their volunteers, right? We wouldn't be able to do what we do without the massive volunteer core that we are able to mobilize in all the markets that we work in. The businesses, these are 501c3s. These are community organizations for the most part. And in order to, support them in executing and leveraging this platform, this year-round platform, our goal ultimately is to drive those charitable dollars and those net proceeds back into the community. So very much have a very similar structure. We use many of the best practices that you'll find on the PGA Tour. Down to Korn Ferry provides their Korn Ferry Advanced coaching services for our tournament directors and our members of our tournament staff to help them continue to grow professionally. So it is, again, sales resources. We have an entire sales management team that will provide, support on some of the basic strategy points to CRMs, to product management, product ladders, ticketing prices. These events have grown. They've become much more sophisticated. They are in, markets that are just right for our product. And it's, we go the balance between not too big and not too small. We want to make sure we don't have too many sort of competitive forces from other teams and sports and other golf tournaments. So market selection is a very important part of that process as well.
And in terms of the sponsors that you're attracting, is there a certain profile, or are you seeing more B2B sponsors as your title sponsors, or is it a wide range?
We've seen most recently regional banks have been very strong in terms of their support. We've also seen hospitals, Memorial Health in Springfield, Illinois. We also have Advent Health, who has joined us as a title sponsor in Kansas City. Rex Hospital in Raleigh has been on our tour, been a longstanding partner, but hospitals and banks have certainly been a growth area for us, and it has worked very well for their needs.
Not unfamiliar to a lot of folks. I think a lot of folks are seeing activity from both of those sectors.
Yeah, I'd say vendor programs have also been very interesting. We do have a number of grocery store chains, Albertsons, we have Price Cutter. The grocery store model, some hospitals use a vendor model, some banks use a vendor model, again, has proven to be very effective in the ability to really maximize charitable proceeds.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember when I was coming up decades ago in sponsorship, and that was just a real big thing for, especially in golf, with at that point the senior PGA Tour and the PGA Tour. There were so many of those, and it seemed to me that maybe that waned a little bit, but good to hear that you're seeing that, because it just makes so much sense as a model. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. I've learned a lot about the tour and the things that you're doing, and really looking forward to seeing what's next for you and the tour, and maybe visiting with you again down the road.
I would love that. Please come join us. We have the NV5 Invitational in Chicago at the Glen Club coming up, and would absolutely love for you to be our guest, and would love to host any of your listeners. So please, if there's a Korn Ferry Tour market in your area, don't hesitate to come out. You can email me directly, and would love to host you.
That's great. Really appreciate that. And I know our viewers and listeners will too. So thanks again, Alex. Really, really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
And on behalf of everyone at Ticket Manager, thank all of you for watching and listening. And please join us again for the next episode in the All Access interview series.